Hey everybody, welcome to this presentation about what makes matter matter. Specifically, we're going to be talking about Objective 1B in this one, which is coming up on the next slide here. Oh, here it is, Objective 1B. Ooh, I moved it there. I can identify different properties of matter as either physical or chemical. Now, we've been talking a little bit about physical or chemical properties with the lab that you're doing, but again, let's take a look at the verb here. You have to identify different properties of matter as either physical or chemical. So basically what's going to happen is I'm going to give you a property of matter on a final assessment, and you're going to have to tell me, is this physical or chemical, using your mad thinking skills and knowing what physical and chemical properties are. So let's talk about the differences between physical and chemical properties. But first, let's talk about how you're taking notes. Go in a Google Doc. It can be the same Google Doc as for Objective 1A. I don't care. But remember, we have two columns here. We have our questions column and we have our details and answers column. Remember, we are filling this one out first. All right? As you go through the presentation, fill that. So feel free to pause me, rewind me, whatever you need to do it so that way you can get the details and answers first. Later on, at the end, we'll ask you to go back and do some questions. Got it? All right, so let's go into the fascinating world of physical and chemical properties. All right, first up, all matter has two main properties. You've got physical properties. These are ones you can observe, you can see, you can easily see about the material or the substance that you're looking at. The key here is it does not change the object or material. It may change what it looks like. All right, so it could change what it looks like, but it won't change the material itself. So we're talking about things like texture, color, density, volume, temperature, magnetism. If you measure this about a substance, it is not going to change it into an entirely different substance. That is a physical property. Chemical properties, however, are just a tad different. Those you just can't observe or measure like right off the bat. What you have to do is you have to perform a chemical change or reaction. And again, the difference here is you will change what the substance is. You are going to change that substance into some other substance as you are performing the test for it. So if you look here, let me erase this. Okay, there we go. So you can see that. So, for example, chemical properties are things like reactivity. That's like how reactive a substance is in water, how reactive it is in air, etc. Flammability is how well it's going to ignite. Combustibility is how well does it burn in oxygen. Yeah, there's things like pH of the substance, rusting, which is another process called oxidation. All right, so those are chemical properties. So you've got physical properties, which you can observe and you don't change the substance when you're measuring it. Then you have chemical properties where you can't just observe it right off the bat. You have to perform a chemical change or reaction, which means you're going to change what the substance is into a different substance. All right? All right, so now that we know the differences between physical and chemical properties, let's identify them like the I can statement says you should be able to do. So here's what you have to go do. You need to go find another person in this class, okay? And when you get to that other person, you need to sit down and look at this list, and you need to talk to each other about, hey, are these physical properties or are these chemical properties? So discuss, is it physical or chemical? And then you need to discuss why, okay? Because the reasons are very important. That shows me your thinking, okay? So what you need to do right now is go find somebody, pause this right now, go find someone and discuss this with them, and then come on back and then we'll talk about the answers. Hey, did you go find that one person and you talk about them? Awesome. Hopefully you wrote that down somewhere. It doesn't matter where you wrote it. Could have done it on a whiteboard. That's fine with me. But let's talk about the answers here. A blue color. Well, I hope you put that as a physical property. Then there's density. Now again, physical property. Why are these both physical properties? Because you don't change the substance when you measure it. It's still the same after you look at the color. It's still the same after you measure the mass over the volume for the density. Okay? Now, flammability is a little different. Flammability, like we talked about, is a chemical property. Because if you're going to set something on fire to see how well it burns, then that's a chemical change. And so it's a chemical property. You're changing the substance into another substance. When you're burning something, it's changing into something. You can't ever get the original back. Now, solubility talks about how well a substance dissolves in water. Well, or dissolves in any other substance, really. That is a physical change. Because all you're doing is dissolving the substance. It's still the same substance, only now it's in water. That's physical. It's physical property. If it reacts with an acid to form hydrogen gas, well, man, the key there is reacts. Chemical reactions change one group of atoms or a couple groups of atoms into different groups of atoms. That's what chemical reactions are. So that's going to be a chemical property if it reacts with acid to form hydrogen gas. Supports combustion. Combustion is how well something burns in oxygen. So that's going to be a chemical property. All right. Again, chemical, because you're going to be turning this into a different substance if it combusts. Volume. If you measure the volume of something, obviously that is a physical change. Okay, physical because, again, you don't change the substance by measuring the volume. Melting point. Now, this is a good one. This is a physical change, or a physical property, and it is a physical property because when you melt something, you're not actually, you're changing what the substance looks like, but you are not actually changing it to a different substance. Melting, remember, when you're melting, you're going from a solid to a liquid, okay? All you're doing is changing what it looks like. It's like ice cubes to water. They're both water. It just looks different, okay? You can get the other one back. You can get the original back. So again, it's a physical property. Again, these two, right away, reacts. Those are both chemical properties. How well something reacts. Reactivity. That is always going to be a chemical property. Hardness, you see that with something of like minerals. That's just how well it can scratch something else. That's a physical property. Because again, you don't change the substance. Okay, again, boiling point. Physical property. Same, this goes along with the melting. Alright? Boiling, when you're going from a liquid to a gas, all you're doing is changing what it looks like. When you're boiling water on the stove and it's turning into steam, it's still H2O. It just looks different. It's got a little more energy. All right. Can neutralize a base. Neutralizing is a chemical reaction. So if you're neutralizing a base, you're going to change that base to something else. Chemical property. Luster is a property of minerals, how shiny it is. So that's a physical property because you're not changing what it is. Conductivity is a measure of how well it conducts electricity. That's physical because you don't actually change the substance. All right? So, those are the answers. Hopefully, you know what physical or chemical properties are. That was a little check for you. All right? So, moving on here. All right. So, are you almost done with your notes? Go back and look at your details. Now, group them mentally into like categories and then create a question for those categories. So then write them in that first column. Also, this is very important. Remember that big question? What makes matter matter? Well, gee, chemical and physical properties, they help us identify matter. They are a big part of that big question. So go ahead and answer the big question in your notes. But here's what I want you to do. Answer the big question using the answers to 1A, which is about the differences between atoms, elements, molecules, and 1B. So I want you to connect these two I can statements and make one answer so far to the big question. Got it? When you are done with your notes, you need to go show them to Mrs. E because she's nosy and she wants to see what you did with your notes. Got it? Awesome.